Hi everyone, build your first Web3 app, IdentiFi, a decentralized digital identity app using Next.js, Solidity, hardhat, shardcn, Privy for authentication, Chainlist to connect to EVMs, and Pinata to store your IPFS files, among others. We are going to build and deploy this on a testnet and host it on Netlify. I promise you a step-by-step guide with no prerequisites required. Watch this full video to understand and learn how to build your first Web3 app. Let's get started. What you are looking at right now is the home page for IdentiFi. We have the Navbar, and we have this hero section and a couple of sections on the home page. So a user connects his MetaMask using Privy. Once the user has signed in successfully, they are being shown this link here called getDID, which is Get Digital Identity. Clicking on it takes you to the onboarding page, where a user can fill in all these details to save their digital identity with IdentiFi. We have a mobile mockup here which shows how your identity is going to look when you share it with your friends and anyone on the internet. The mobile mockup updates in real time as you type your details. So for example, test user gets updated in real time over here, and as you keep on adding the details, the mobile mockup gets updated in real time. So we can type test@gmail.com and it gets updated as well. Enter any phone number, it gets updated, and we can choose a skill. So we have DevOps, data science, among many other skills that you can select. And each of these skills, once selected, also gets updated at the side here. You can add your social media, so https, then twitter.com, you add your username. As soon as the input method detects this is a valid Twitter URL, it shows it at the social site. Same applies for the other social media. Once you are done, you click on submit. A MetaMask confirmation is going to show, and once you click on confirm, your identity is going to be registered on the blockchain and can be shared with anyone. We can check or verify any identity on this verify identity page. You just have to enter the name of the user or the identity that you want to search, and once there is a match, it takes you to the verify page or the profile page. Without wasting my time, let's just get right into coding. So we will start by cloning the starter file, and the link for the starter file has been placed in the description. So when we visit my GitHub repo, you can see the IdentiFi starter file here. We click on it and copy this URL to clone this project. When we launch our Visual Studio Code and open the terminal, we can type git clone followed by the URL we just copied from my GitHub repo, and then specify the directory in which we want to install this repo. Since I have already created a directory, I am just going to replace it with dots, indicating I want to install everything within the directory that I have opened. Hit on enter and wait for some few seconds for this to get cloned. Alright, so we just cloned the starter file. Now what we are going to do is to install all the packages required to run this program. After we are done installing all the packages, I will walk you guys through what we have in the starter file. So to install all the packages, we are going to type yarn install, and if you're using npm, we are going to type npm install. So let's hit on enter and wait for some few minutes to get this done. So all the packages have been installed. So now, when we run this code, we are not going to see anything. But before we even run this code, I want to take you through what we have in the starter file. So we have the global.css and we have the favicon, this icon right here. And inside the components folder, using shardcn, we have been able to install all these components: accordion, button, form, input, label, and the rest. So when we get to this part, I'm going to teach you guys how to run the shardcn command or the specific command to get all these components installed. Most of the components here, we are going to be building them from scratch or going through them from scratch. For example, the custom image uploader is a component we are going to go through from scratch, and we have the public directory which contains the assets and the images and the logos. That being said, let's go ahead and create a layout page that is going to handle the authentication from Privy, and then we start writing the Solidity code. So in the app folder, we right click on the app folder or select the app folder and click on this icon here, and we are going to create a file named layout.tsx, which is the layout for the application. We need this layout to handle or to set up our authentication and other important things. So to start creating the layout page, we called use client. So we start by importing define chain. From VM. And then we import outfit from Next font Google. Outfit is going to be the font we are going to use for this application. And then we import the global CSS, this one over here, global CSS. So to install the Privy authentication, I'll go to the official website. The link to this website will be placed in the description. So over here on this website, we have the quick startup, which shows you a step-by-step guide on how to install Privy in Next.js and React.js as well. So we have the npm command, pnpm, and yarn. So if you're on npm, you copy this version, pnpm, you copy this version, and if you are on yarn, you copy this version as well. So when you copy this version, you head back to your Visual Studio Code, paste it. I still have the git clone URL in my clipboard. So when you copy this and paste it, it's going to get the Privy installed for you. We are not going to install it because we already have it by running the yarn install command from our starter file. And when we scroll down, we are supposed to get a Privy ID to set up our logins method. So I will click on this link, and then we are going to be sent to the Privy Dashboard where we can create an app and also get our ID, Privy ID. So we click on new app. First of all, before we can see this page, you'd have to log in with your email and then click on new app. So you're going to give this app IdentiFi and click on create. Once we are done, we can get or retrieve our keys over here. So we will get back to this page in a second. So let's get back to the quick installation procedure, and then we will come back and copy the Privy app ID. When we scroll down, it gives us the step on how to install this in Next.js and also React.js as well. So in Next.js, we import the client, which we have already done here, and then import Privy provider. So we are going to import the Privy provider, or let's copy this and then paste it over here. So we create a constant called font to initialize the outfit font that we imported from Nest font Google. Right, so we have outfit, and then we have a subset of Latin. So this is the root layout. So we are going to type export default a function root layout. Root layout, and then we pass in children. And since we are using TypeScript, we have to give the children a type. So what is going to be the type of children? It's going to be React.React node. And we have we open the curly bracket here, and then we return the following. So first of all, we are going to return an HTML tag, which is going to be the parent tag covering the rest of the element, and give it a language of English, a default language of English. Then we open a body tag and create a class name with a font dot class name. And then we move back to the Privy website and copy everything over here. Copy starting from this point, copy all the way up to this part and paste it here. So once we paste this piece of code, we see right away app ID, which says we are Privy app ID. So we will get back to the dashboard page and then scroll down to API keys, and we can have our app ID under the API keys tab. So we just copy it and then replace it with this string over here, and then we are good to go. There is a configuration object here which you can modify to suit your taste. So we have appearance, which you can choose whether you want the login modal to be a light or a dark theme, to have a dark or light theme. And we have an asset color and also a logo URL. So you can upload your logo onto any server and copy the URL, replace it here, and then you're going to get your logo shown in any modal that is going to pop up by Privy. And then we have enable wallet, create on login, user without wallet. So we are not going to worry about this for now, but there are a couple of objects and properties that we have to add to this Privy provider. So the first one is going to be default chain, and then I'm going to leave this blank. I'll get back to it later on. And then we have supported chains. So in building Web3 applications, you need a chain. So the chain is more of like the network which is going to connect you to the Ethereum virtual machine. So we have a lot of chains out there. So let's get back to this website, Chainlist.org. So Chainlist.org is a Web3 website or platform that helps users to connect to EVM, which stands for Ethereum Virtual Machines Powered Networks. So we have tons of Ethereum virtual networks or machines. And for these tutorials, we are going to use BitTorrent, BTTC. We have other networks like Avalanche, we have Chainlink, we have Polygon, and so many others. But we are going to use BTTC for these tutorials. So when we come to the search network tab, you have to check this checkbox here to include testnet. So we are going to search for BTTC, and then add it to MetaMask. So before you can interact with a blockchain or any Web3 application, you would need a wallet, and we have so many wallets in the system. We have Wallet Connect, we have MetaMask, and many others. But the most popular one is MetaMask. If you don't have MetaMask installed, you can search on Google, install MetaMask. And I'll put this link in the description as well. When we come or visit the MetaMask download web page, you can select your supported browser. You can choose Chrome, and it is going to take you to the Chrome web extensions store, and you can follow the installation procedure. It's very simple. So once you are done installing the MetaMask and setting everything up, you come back to the Chainlist website and add the BitTorrent chain testnet to your MetaMask. So it will open this, and then you will approve this to be added to your testnet or your network. I already have this, so there is no need to add it back or add it again. So I will cancel this. So once you add it to your MetaMask, you will find it in the drop down in the network tab at this button here, and then you can select it or choose it. So I have mine here, BitChain. And when I click on this one, don't worry much about the tokens that we have here. I am going to teach you how to get your own tokens. So when I click on this drop down here and go to settings and move to networks, select chain denial. Let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. We are about to create our default chain. So the network that is going to connect us to the Ethereum virtual machine. So we create a variable called, or a constant called BitTorrent. And this is going to be our default chain. You could have so many chains that the user have the option to choose from. But to make everything simple, we are going to create one or a single default chain. So we have the ID, the chain ID, and we can get the chain ID from here. So whatever the chain ID you have here, copy it and then paste it. So we add our comma, and then we create a name for this network. So the name is going to be BitTorrent chain testnet. So this is a testnet. We are going to name it BitTorrent chain testnet. So BitTorrent chain testnet. And then we have a network. We are going to name the network same as BitTorrent chain testnet. Paste it. We have our native currency for this testnet. We want 18 point decimal, and the name is also going to be BitTorrent chain testnet. And we have a symbol BTTC. Now this is the most important part of this object. We have what we called RPC URLs. This RPC URL is going to make sure any smart contract or any address that connects to your app have access to the correct endpoint that links you to the EVM. So we are going to have our default URL, which is going to be HTTP, and then we will come back to the MetaMask and copy this new RPC URL. What you have in your MetaMask may be different from mine, but all the same, they all work pretty fine. Should in case you get an error connecting to the IP or the RPC that you have in your MetaMask, you can copy mine. I'll place it in the description so it will be easy for you to copy and then add exactly what I have here. And then we are going to create a block explorer. This block explorer is responsible for verifying a transaction on a blockchain. After a user has interacted with your application, they can check on the block explorer to view the details, everything that they did. So we have a default, and then we have a name called Explorer, and the URL is going to be this one. So we copy this one as well. So we add as any here to make sure we get rid of the TypeScript error. So the default chain is going to be BitTorrent, this object here, the one we just created. So I'll copy this and paste it here and put this in the array of supported chains as well. Supported chains. So we just set up our own chain or network that will connect us to the Ethereum virtual machine, BitTorrent. So once we have this implemented, we are good to go. We are done with setting up the Privy in our layout.typescript. When we get back to the dashboard and click on login methods, we can prioritize whether we want to display Web2 logins or Web3 logins. So the Web2 logins are going to be email, login, SMS, and other social media platforms like GitHub, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the rest. Whilst Web3 wallets are also going to prioritize connecting the user to Web3 wallets, so like MetaMask, Wallet Connect, and then the rest. I just changed the login priority from Web2 to Web3. You can do that as well. So let's save the changes and move back to our Visual Studio Code. So to run this application, let's create a new folder under the app directory called landing, bring in the parentheses, landing-page, which is going to be our landing page. The landing page is going to contain a couple of other components and other things, but we will get back to this landing page after we are done creating the smart contract. So over here, we are just going to type page.tsx. And inside this page, we are just going to import React from React, constant landing page, and return landing page. So we have to export this by typing export default landing page. So let's go ahead and run this code. So yarn run dev. So we can navigate to localhost port 3000. Alright, so we had an error here which says can't resolve global.css. We don't have anything like global. It's supposed to be globals. So let's save this and see if we have any other error. Refresh the page, localhost port 3000, and we have landing page here. So we will get back and build this landing page and make it look exactly like what we have in the finished product. But before then, let's go ahead and create our smart contract from scratch. And once we are done with the smart contract, we will get back in building the landing page. So to start creating your smart contract, we will navigate to hardhat.org and learn the installation procedure. The link will be placed in the description as usual. So we have npm and yarn. I have already installed this, so I'm not going to install it. If you haven't done that, copy this code, open your VS Code, and then paste it in the terminal and hit enter. This is going to install hardhat for you. Hardhat is the environment that is going to help us create our smart contract, run it, and test it. You can test and see whether hardhat has been installed successfully. So I'll copy this command and then paste it in my terminal. So npx hardhat init. This is going to initialize a hardhat environment for us to write our Solidity code. So we hit enter and we are going to be asked. Okay, so I have an error here which says we are trying to initialize a project inside existing hardhat projects. The path to the project configuration file is. Okay, so I am unable to run this command npm hardhat init because I already have a hardhat configuration. So I will delete everything here. I'll just go ahead and delete this and then run the command all over again. And then we have a successful run. So it's asking us whether we want to create a JavaScript or a TypeScript project. So let's create a TypeScript project, and we want the root directory to be this very directory, and we don't want any git ignore. Okay, so we couldn't initialize this sample project because we already have a TypeScript config. Okay, alright, so I think with the hardhat, the main focus is to write the Solidity code, and we will barely use TypeScript in any part of this configuration, since we don't want to mess up with the already installed TypeScript configuration. I would like us to use JavaScript for this hardhat initialization instead of TypeScript. So we create a TypeScript project instead, and then we hit on no. Alright, so we just installed or initialized a hardhat environment to write our Solidity code. If you will notice, you can see we have these new folders: contract, ignition, and test, and also hardhat.config.js. So we have the ignition folder, which handles the deployment. We have the contract folder, which is going to handle the Solidity contract or code, and we have the hardhat.config.js. So let's start by writing some configuration in the hardhat.config.js. Alright, so let's get started. We already have our required nomic foundation / hardhat toolbox, which we are not going to touch. And we have constant. Let's create a constant to hold a file system, or let's import a file system module, and then create this variable private key equals fx dot read file sync, and we are going to read secret dot tst to string. So you may ask, what is the uses of this? Anytime you are done running your smart contract code, you would have to deploy it to the testnet or the specific RPC URL. And to do that, you would need an address, an Ethereum address that has tokens in it, because you're going to be charged a fee for deploying your smart contract on any EVM that you would want to deploy your code to. So to do that, we would need to copy one of the private keys from our address that we have in the MetaMask and create a new file named secret.tst and paste the private key over there. So I have mine copied. To copy your private key, you will just have to open the MetaMask, navigate to the network, the BitTorrent network, and then in any of the account you have. So make sure you take notice of the account. If possible, give it a name. So I'm going to use account 5 for these purposes, which already have BTC in it. Before BTTC, so before we run our smart contracts, I will teach you guys how to get your own testnet or test tokens. So when you click on the account, select on this drop down, go to account details and click on show private key. So I'll type my password, and then it will ask me to hold to reveal my private key. So once you see your private key, click on this copy icon and paste it inside the secret.tst. So you may ask, so what if I commit this code to GitHub or any public repository? You are cooked, because anyone can have your address or steal all your tokens once they have your private key. So this is supposed to be handled with caution. We are going to add it to the get ignore. So we have secret.tst. This is to make sure that this key doesn't mistakenly get committed to any public repository, meaning we only have this private key within our environment and not in any public repository. We have the private key. Alright, so we have default networks. Let's make this localhost, and then we have networks. So networks sound exactly like what it is intended to do. Network is going to hold all the networks which we can deploy our smart contract to. So let's start by configuring hardhat and give it a chain ID for 4202. And we have to create another network. So I would want you to guess the network that we will be creating here. If you said BitTorrent, your guess was right. So we are going to create BitTorrent over here, and we type in the URL, which is we are going to get from the network tab that we opened. So it will be the same RPC URL. We paste that and then we select accounts. So what account do we want to use to deploy the smart contract? That is where the private key comes in. So when we type the private key, it's going to deduct the transaction fee from the private key we provided. And we have gas price. So let's type this number here. All right, so let's type this number here. And I think everything is all right. So if we had a couple of network like Matic or Mumbai, you would have to add the object name. So for example, Matic, and then you add the URL, you add the account as well, and probably the gas price. So we are going to get rid of that. So inside, we are not done yet. So let's copy this code here. When you check the hardhat.config.js, you would be able to see this code here, and then paste it right beneath the Solidity version. All right, so we are done with the configuration, the hardhat configuration. So let's move to we will touch the test later on, and same as the log as well. Let's start writing our Solidity code. So I'll highlight everything here and get rid of it and rename this file from log.sol to identify.sol. Before we start writing the Solidity code, I'll give a brief overview on what Solidity is. So basically, or in a nutshell, Solidity is the programming language used to write smart contracts to be deployed on the Ethereum virtual machine. And if you have no knowledge Solidity, I would recommend that you learn it from their official documentation website. So you can get to learn everything about Solidity on their website. And I'll also link a couple of videos that I think will be helpful in learning the Solidity as well, so that you'll be able to understand the smart contracts. But then I'll try my best to explain whatever thing that we are doing for absolute beginners. All right, so let's get started. We start by typing this comment, spdx line 6 identifier MIT. So once you add this comment, we type pragma solidity, and then we type the version of 0.08. So these two are supposed to be added, right? Okay. So for the application that we are about to write, or the code we are about to write, it's all about a digital identity system or platform. So we have information about a user, and all this information are going to be stored on the blockchain. Yeah, so the user object include personal information like first name, last name, email, home address, date of birth, social media links, and basic informations, and also functions to create a user and edit a user as well. So we are going to start by creating a class or a contract in Solidity. So we write contract and then give it a name, IdentiFi. Open our curly bracket. Let's create a structure. So a struct called user. What is a structure? So if you're coming from a JavaScript background, you can think of a structure as an object, right? So this object contains only properties. It doesn't contain method, but just properties. So a struct can be a user with a string of first name, a string of last name, a string of username, a string of email, and so on and so forth. So let's start by creating the strings. So we start by creating a string, first name, bring the semicolon, else it's going to throw a syntax error. So we have string last name, camel case, sorry. We have string username, a string email, string home address, we have a string date of birth, a string of education, a string of work history, and then a phone number. So we have string job title, and then we have string X, which is the URL for the social media. We have string Instagram, a string for YouTube, a string for LinkedIn, a string for info, a little bit information about the user, and then a string but in an array form to store the scales. If you remembered the demonstration, the scaled was a drop down which could be one or more, and then we have a string to store the user profile, so image URL, and then we have a boolean to identify whether the user exists or not, and we have a uint of an array which is going to contain the applied job. So initially the plan was to add jobs to this application, but later on I took it out for some reasons, but I am adding it here so that we don't run into any errors. Then we have visibility, Notice how we have visibility in caps or uppercase, and we have all the other types in lowercase or lowercase. It's because this visibility is our own type that we are about to create in some few seconds. So we create another struct and name it visibility. This visibility over here, and this is going to contain a boolean, more of like a settings for the user to choose which part of the part of his personal information to be visible to the public. So boolean education means the user will be able to toggle between true or false, whether to show his education history or not. So we have same for work history. I'll copy everything here. Just work history, phone number, and then dates of birth. So copy it and paste it here. Change this to bool and change this to bool. All right, and finally, okay, so last but one, we have the home address, right? Home address. And lastly, we have the date of birth. Okay, bring in the semicolon. Now we are going to break our structure into smaller chunks for the smart contracts. You see, in smart contracts, there is a limit to number of parameters that you can pass in a function. And if we left everything in this giant user struct, it was going to throw an error. So for that reason, we created a smaller chunks of the details. So for example, a struct for basic info, right? A struct for basic info, which was the first name, last name, email, home address, and phone number. So I'll copy this here and paste it, and add the phone number. So strict phone number. So that will be it for the struct for string for basic info. And then we have a struct for social links. A struct for social links, which I would also copy from X, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. Yes, I'll copy everything here. Okay, so you have to add TikTok. So string TikTok. So copy from X all the way to LinkedIn. Paste it here. And then we create our final struct for the professional info. So struct professional info. I would also copy the professional info, like the education, work history, job title, info, and the rest. So string education, job title, info, and then the skills, and also the image URL. All right, so now let's create these variables. So mapping string to a user struct. This is going to be a private variable named users. So what we are doing here is we are trying to map a string to a user, right? We are trying to map a string to a user. So a user string could be something like, say, let me add a comment. So meant could be the string, and then it is going to map to a user. So the user contains information like the first name, last name, info, social media icons, and then the rest. So what we are doing here is to map every single user that we create in the application to a user object. So we have a mapping address to user as well. It's also going to be a private variable, address to username. And this is also going to work similar to what we have. So we're going to have an address. So an address is going to be something like 0x2EF, whatever, something like this, or something of this source. And it is also going to be mapped to a user. So we have the first name, last name, or any of the information. So once we have an address, we can get all the respective user information as well. And then we have mapping of string to a boolean, which is also going to be a private variable username. So we have a boolean assigned to a string. All right. Okay. So let's create our modifier. We are going to create a modifier to check if a user exists already before we go ahead and create that user identity. So modifiers are more of like middleware that checks, right? It checks for a condition. So the name of the modifier is going to be only unique username. Since this is a digital identity application, we wouldn't want two users' name of the same type to exist on the chain. So we create a string named memory, and then we pass in the username. So what this is going to do is to check. So we are going to require username dot username. So this is what is happening. This username is coming from the username that we map to a boolean. So something like this. So a username, say user1, and the boolean is true, meaning the user has already signed up. So user2 is also going to have a boolean of true, right? So when we have a username, by default all these booleans are going to be false. So when we have a new username, say username3, coming from the front end, we are going to destruct. So we have the username, which is this variable here, and once we pass in username, we are going to get the boolean variable. So for a new user, it's going to be false, right? So if we have a username that exists, we are going to revert with this error message: user already exists or user taken. So let's write exists. What is going on? Modify do not contain. Okay, so we are going to return this. Right, so it turns out we are having the same names here, so username and username, and Solidity is confused on which to use. So we made a mistake here. Instead of typing usernames, we made it username. So let's add s and then add x to the side, making it usernames, and now the error is gone. We are going to create a function to add a user. So we write function create user, open a parenthesis, not a curly bracket. So we have inside the parenthesis is going to be the argument, which we are going to accept from the front end. So first thing first, we are going to need the username coming from the front end. We would also need basic info, which is the struct that we created, memory and basic info. And then we are going to have professional info, memory, and then we have professional info, social links, and we have memory as well, and then social links, and finally visibility, memory, visibility. So having this, this is going to be a public function, and we are going to call the modifier only unique username. So the username coming from the front end. So we type in username. So this is going to check every time we create a new user to see whether the user exists or not. And inside this curly bracket is where we are going to write the logic to add a user. Trust me, this is very simple. So we first create a user object, storage, right? And then type users and then username. So we are trying to get access to all the user objects and properties before we update them on the blockchain, right? So the first thing you're going to do is user.firstname equals basic info.firstname, and then we have user.lastname is going to be basic info.lastname, and we are going to do same for every other thing. So date of birth is basic info dot date of birth. Okay, so date of birth is not found. Let's check the basic info. Okay, so we added string date of birth, and then we have everything. Let me add this. You have usernames. The mapping that we created is going to map a username to true, and then we have address to username, which is also going to map the message.sender to a username, right? So let me briefly explain what we just did here. So we initialize the user class into this variable. So we have user.firstname. We are updating the basic info.firstname with user.firstname, and we are doing same for the last name all the way up to image URL, and then some properties like user.exist, we set that one to true, and also the visibility as well. So we have users open square bracket username equals true. So this is the struct or the mapping that we created. So we are mapping the username to a boolean over here, and at this side we are mapping the user address, right? We are mapping the user address to a string, which is the username. So we are mapping the user address. So this msg.sender is a property inside Solidity that is going to get access to the address of the caller. So anyone calling this smart contract address is going to be msg.sender. So that is how come we get the address of the user. And then a function to edit the user. We are going to change the add user or the create user to edit user. And then a modification. So we added a required here that shows a user does not exist, and we have the storage, and we have all the other properties as well. So the code for this smart contract is also available. Alright, so we are going to create a function to get the user by username. So a function get user by username of a string memory username public view returns, and we have to add a parenthesis here. We want to return the basic information, memory basic information, basic info. We also want to return professional info and social links and also visibilities. And once we have this as our parameters or the return properties, we just have to make sure the user exists. So we bring the required and we add the condition. So users, we check the username and check the exist property. So we check if the user do not exist, and then we create a user storage, user equals users, and we have username. So first thing first, the basic info section is going to return user dot first name, user dot last name, user dot email, user dot home address, user dot date of birth, and then finally user dot phone number. That is all we need from the basic info. So we will go ahead and where is this function? Okay. So one curly bracket is missing. One curly bracket is missing. So we have basic info struct. So there's one more thing missing in the basic info. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What is missing in the basic info struct? Which is the date of birth, right? So we have to add the date of birth to this date of birth. All right. And then we are going to type professional info and also return all these social links and return all these, and then we check the visibility and return everything: basic info, professional info, social links, and visibility. So let's create a function to get user by address. So we have the address, user address, and then we have public view returns, and we want to return the basic info, professional info, social links, and visibilities. So we do that, and create a string of memory to have the username, address to username, then we have the user address, this one here, from this variable. Save it, and then we return get username, expected identifier. Okay, so function and return get username by username, and then we pass in the username. All right. Okay, so this was to get the user by address, which was a single user. And now we create a function to get a username by address. So this is to get a user by address, and then now we want to get a username given an address. So that is the function we are about to create at the moment. So function get username by address. So we have the address, user address, going to be public, view, returns string, memory, and we are going to return address to usernames. So we are going to return address to username, and we are going to have the user address. So given any address, could be 0x00, and we are going to return the username like Men's Albert or user1. All right. We have these two functions called set visibility and get visibility. So I'll copy those two functions and then paste it here. They are basically same to what we did here. So if you understood how to create a function and how all these variables get updated and come together, you will be able to understand the get visibility as well. All right, so I've copied the set visibility and then the get visibility. So that will be it for the smart contract. And I hope you guys understood everything. And if not, you can just hit me up on Telegram, Discord, or my Twitter, or even through email. And I will be willing to give you any further explanations or additional information. So we have our smart contract created. Now we have to write a test. We have to write a test. The test for this smart contract will be gigantic because we have about 204 lines of Solidity code, which is a lot of code, and testing this or explaining every single code in the test is going to drift the main purpose of this video. So this is the test code for the application. I wouldn't be going through this or writing it from scratch, so I just copied it and pasted it here, and you can go through it on your own time. But if you want me to make a video on testing Solidity smart contracts, I would be willing to create a video on that. But for now, copy everything and paste it here and follow along. So one more final piece before we run this particular code. We need to modify this. This is the deployment code. So a deployment code is a script that deploys a smart contract. So it compiles the smart contract and deploy it to the respective network that you want to deploy it to. So over here we have this boilerplate code coming from hardhat. We don't need any of these, so we are going to get rid of everything, leaving the build module. So we are going to build our own or write our own script. So we type module.export equals build module, and the name of our smart contract is IdentiFi. We need that, and then we type m. Once we have this, we can create a constant called IdentiFi, which is going to hold contract, and then we have IdentiFi. So this particular line is going to get or access the contracts that we just wrote in our Solidity or our contracts folder and deploy it to any testnet that we want to deploy it to. So we return this which is going to be the smart contract address, and it is going to be one of the important pieces that we will need in the front end to make everything work. So we are about to deploy the smart contract onto the BitTorrent testnet or network. Before we deploy it, I want to show you guys how to get a free testnet token so that you'll be able to have enough tokens to deploy the smart contracts. So when we come to this website, BitTorrent chain, the now facet, I'll place the link in the description. When we come to this website, you would see that you can put any address here of your choice, and you'll be rewarded with this amount of testnet. When you open MetaMask and select the network drop down, select your network, you can choose any address. So let's select address number 2, copy the address, and then paste it here and click on obtain. So I can see a message here, sent successfully. We wait for some few seconds and check if it will hit our account. So let's wait for some few seconds and check if this is going to hit our account. And then boom, we have the testnet token. You will need this to deploy the smart contract. So without this, you cannot deploy the smart contract. So I want you all to visit this website and get your token and come back to VS Code and let's deploy the contract. So I'm going to clear the interface or the terminal. And when we get back to the hardhat website, it shows us how to deploy a smart contract. So when we scroll all the way to the bottom part of the website, it shows us how to deploy a smart contract. So I will go ahead and copy everything from this terminal and paste it here. So first of all, our deployed code or the deployed script is located in Ignition and modules and lock.js. But we have TypeScript here, so we have to change this to JS. And also, we are going to change this localhost to BitTorrent. And once this is done, we can cut it and then deploy our smart contract. Save it and deploy our smart contract. So it asks, confirm to deploy the network on BitTorrent. Yes, of course. Our Solidity code was compiled successfully and it is being deployed to the BitTorrent network. And boom, we have our deployment address. This is a huge step because to be able to create your smart contract, write a test, configure your hardhat, and run your code on the first try to get a deployed address, this is a huge milestone. So we will copy this address somewhere. Let's copy it and paste it here, comment it out, because we are going to use it to write or to connect our front-end application onto the testnet. So that being said, this will end the smart contract part of this project. So we are coming to dive into the front-end part and connect everything together. Before we connect everything together, let's create these two folders. So we create a folder named lib and then create another one named Utils. So inside the lib folder, we are going to create a file called utils.typescript, and let's copy and paste this here. A reusable component have its own class, but to give a user an option to type their own class into a reusable component, we would have to write this function. And then inside the utils, we are going to create 4 files or 4 or more files. So we are first going to create a file name form schema.typescript, which we are going to tackle when we get to the forms part in onboarding the user. And then we have index.js. We have options.typescript. We have queries.js, and the final file we are going to add in the utils is when we come to the artifact directory. You only get access to this artifact directory after you are done deploying your smart contract to a network. And navigate to contract, open IdentiFi directory, and then copy this identify.json file. I will explain what this file, the role of this file in the code. So we have all these created in the utils file. So what we are going to do next is to create the code and the functions for all these files. So inside our utils folder, we will start with the queries.js. So now what this queries file is going to do is to, in Web3 application, you have to write a contract function that is going to connect your contract address to your front end. And we have a lot of packages to do this. So we have Utils, we have Web3, we have Third Web. And in this project, we are going to use Utils. We have already installed Utils. If you started from the starter file I provided, you can see we have Utils installed already. But if that is not the case for you, you can visit or open your browser and search for Utils npm, and then you'll be sent to the npm website, package website, where you can copy this exact code and then paste it inside your terminal and install it. So we are going to import Utils. And also import the identity.json file that we copied from the artifact. So we copied the artifact, this particular one here, identify.json. So this artifact.json file contains we have something we call ABI. It contains all the inputs and the functions that we wrote in the smart contract. So this JSON file will serve as an interface to communicate between the smart contract that we deployed on the BitTorrent testnet and the front end. So what we are going to do right now is to, we have the identify imported, .json imported, which we copied and pasted over here. So we export this function called contract. And obviously this is going to be an async function. So inside the function, we create, I have a typo mistake here, const. So inside the async function, we create a variable called provider. And then we initialize ethers.providers, web3 provider. Then we pass window.ethereum. and then we have a const to distract the Ethereum object from the window, right? And then we make a condition. If the Ethereum exists, we are going to create a constant called a signer. So create a constant called provider.signer. So this signer is whoever is going to interact with this smart contract or this application. Signer const contract reader. We initialize new Utils.contract, and then this function accepts 3 parameters. So the first is going to be the contract address. Remember, when we deployed the address, we had a contract, which I said we should copy and save it somewhere else. So I save mine in the hardhat.config.js file. I'll copy it, head back to queries, and then paste it as the first argument. And from then, we use the ABI. We pass in the ABI. So we can get the ABI from the JSON file that we imported here, IdentiFi.abi, which is available in the JSON object over here. And finally, the last parameter is going to be a signer. It's going to be a signer. We are going to return the contract reader. So we are going to use this to communicate to all the functions that we created in the smart contract. These functions. All right, so we have our contract reader returned. It's supposed to be in here. So we have contract reader returned. So now let's head to index.js. Okay, so sorry for making this huge mistake. All the code that we wrote in the queries.json are for the index.json. I initially thought we were already in the index file. So all this code are for the index.js. So let's copy every code in the queries.js, cut it, and then paste it in the index. And head back to the queries.js and start to write the functions for accessing the functions we created in the smart contract. So the first thing we are going to start with is to create this function. So let's import contract. So you're going to import contract from index. Index. So contract. All right. This index here. This one. Okay. So we have the index imported. We create a function called pass error message, which accepts an argument of E, which will represent the error that we are going to receive. And then we create a constant JSON equals JSON.pass. Most of these errors are encoded, so we have to pass them and then be able to work with them correctly. And then we return JSON.reason, return JSON.error.message. And let's create a function, the function to get the username by address. So get username by address function. So we export async function get username by address. So in this function, we have the user address coming in as the parameter. And then we try and catch. We try and catch const the contract object we await the contract. So we await for this contract to be initiated. Yes, initiated, and every result that is going to come or returned after our contract has initiated is going to be stored in this contract obj. So what do we do with that? We can get the username by typing await, and then the contract object is now holding the functions. It's now holding what? The functions. So we can get username by address here and pass the user address that we are getting from this argument or coming from wherever we are calling this function. And when we get that, we can confidently return the username. And inside the catch, we log the error, whatever error that we have for debugging purposes, and we return the pass error function that we created. So it accepts the error as an argument. So next, the function we are going to work on is create user. Create user. So we export this function, export async function, create user, and the create user is going to accept these objects. So we have username, we have the basic info, we have the professional info, we have social links, and then visibility. So I add this curly bracket, and we are going to create a try catch block as well for this, and create the same constant called contract object, which is going to hold the returned result after this contract has been initiated. And then we are going to create a constant called transaction. So transaction response equals await, and then we have the contract object dot create user. This is the function we have in the smart contract over here, create user. So we are calling that function after we have initiated the contract from this index file that we created. So we have access to the create user function coming from the smart contract, and we have to pass in the appropriate argument. So the first argument is going to be username, basic info, professional info, social links, and visibility, right? And then we create a constant to hold the receipt. After the contract has been written on the blockchain, it returns a receipt, and we have to wait for that receipt to be processed. That's why we have the await here, and we are going to return the receipt. This receipt is going to contain informations like a respond, test successful user creation, and then we log the error here for debugging purposes and return the pass error message as well. So we have the get name, username by address function created, create user created. Let's move ahead to edit user. So I'll copy everything that we have for create user and modify it for edit user. So pasting it and renaming this to edit user. Basically the same argument the same contract object, transaction response, same argument. We rename this to edit user. We also wait for the transaction response and then return receipt and throw an error whenever there is an error. So edit user is also done. So we are creating this function to get user by username. So get any user by username and export async function get user by username. We pass the username as a parameter, and here we are going to create the contract object as well. Await contract, and we are going to also get the user. We are going to get the user. So await contract object, the get username, and we pass in this argument, right? So we are going to return the user, but remember the user was broken down into smaller chunks, so we have to repeat that same pattern. So we have the basic, right? So we have basic info as an object, right? And then we can distract the first name by using user.basicinfo.firstname. So we are getting this from the smart contracts, right? So we can access all these properties stored in this object and return it all together. So basically we are also going to return the last name and then user.basicinfo.lastname. To save a little bit of time, I would like to copy the basic info and paste it here. So we have the basic info. Next, we move to the professional info, social links, and then visibility. So we have the basic info, we have the professional info, the social links, visibility as well. I forgot to run the try catch, so you need that. You need a try catch block, and then I'll copy all these into the try, and then I'll log the error and return the pass error message. So log error and then return the pass error message with the error as a parameter or as an argument. So we just created the get user by username function. And then we are also going to create similar function for get user by address. Decoupling your business logic into separate files makes the code more readable and easy to format and debug. The get user address is similar to the get user by username. So I'll go ahead and copy this function here, get user by username, and do a couple of edits and modification. So we have get user by address, and I'm going to paste this. First thing first, we are going to rename this from get user by username to get user by address, and copy it, and we have paste it here, get user by address. Instead of username here, we are going to have the user address, right? And then we are also going to use the user address over here, and we are going to return basically the same information, and pretty much everything is the same. So minimize this, and we are going to, initially the plan was to add jobs, like add a job so a user can create a job and vice versa. I wouldn't be creating the job function, but they will be available in the final code, so you can work on that as a hands-on or an improvement version for this application. So I'll copy the add job function, the get job function, set visibility function, and get visibility function, and give a brief overview and explanation to how this function works. So they have been copied and I just pasted them over here. So the add job accepts a username and the job ID, also interacts with the smart contract on this function. So we have the get jobs and set visibility. You have the username, education, work history, phone number, home address, and date of birth. So we use the try catch block, and then we call the set visibility function from the smart contract, passing those arguments, wait for the transaction response, return the receipt, and return an error for debugging purposes. And we have the same for get visibility. You only need the username to get the visibility. Right, so let's save this and move ahead to, we have the index file created, queries created, options. So what we have left is options and form schema. I'll get back to this when we get to certain parts of the applications. So let's quickly move back to the landing page and then continue to build everything that we started. So now this is what the website looks like, and it doesn't look anything close or similar to the complete project that I demonstrated at the beginning of the video. So we are going to create a navbar, a hero section, and then a couple of sections here to build the landing page. Right, so back to code. On the landing page, this is how the format or layout is going to be. So we are going to have a navbar here, and we are going to have a hero section. We are also going to have a section, a final section. So I think it will be wise and appropriate if we start with the navbar. So let's create the navbar. So in the component directory, let's create a new folder called navbar. And inside the navbar, we are going to create the navbar.tsx and create a component for this navbar. We are going to have a couple of elements for this navbar. So we create a component and we have the navbar.tsx. So inside this navbar, we are going to type use client and import React from React, and this use state and use effect. And then we would need action button in this navbar component. So I'll just leave a comment here, name it action bar, and we are going to create it when we get to the part where we will need it. And also a logo, and then we will have a menu as well. So for now, let's export the navbar, create a const navbar, and create this constant here called the navbar class, navbar classes. So we are going to write these properties, these Tailwind CSS properties. So we have flex, item center, and justify between, space x 10, a background of white, height of 14. We want this to stick at the top, so the navbar is going to stick at the top. So we have sticky top 0, z index of 50, a border of B, a border bottom. We want to add a border at the bottom, and we want to give the border a gray color of 200. So we are going to save that, and we are going to return a div. So we are going to return this div with a class name of this variable that we created. So it's going to be navbar classes, right? So, and we are going to have another div with a class name. So this div is going to contain the logo and the menu. So we have a flex, items, center, justify between, justify center, and then we have our logo and our menu. So let's start with the logo. So we are going to create a file named logo.tsx, and the logo is going to be very simple. We just import a link, since we are going to link it to the home page all the time, or anytime the user clicks on it. And then we have a const logo, and then we return this. We return the link, href, and we have a span. So this span is going to contain the logo text. So we are going to have a span, and then give it these class names. So a margin left of 3, a margin right of 2, and then a text of extra large, and give it a font of bold. So inside this span, we will type the first part of the logo, which is identity, and then the phi is having a different color from the identity, and we also put that in a span. So we have the phi, give it a class name, test sky 600, and then the logo is just created. So we export the logo, export default logo, export default logo, and then we import the logo over here. So now we can, let's export default this navbar. So we have to add the menu, and also we have to add the action buttons, right? But to test what we have out, we are going to replace them by a comment, and then move back to the landing page and replace this with our navbar. Save it, make sure we have all the files saved, and then we can check. So there we go, we have our logo here, IdentiFi, with this border bottom, the one we created at this side, the border B. So it gave us this nice effects border here. So inside the logo, I don't want any space in between the identity and the phi, so I just get rid of the space, and then we have it. Alright, so the next thing we are going to do in the navbar component is to create the menu. And to create the menu, we are going to create a new file called menu.tsx. This is going to hold our menu, and these are going to be responsive. So we have this menu rendered on a mobile device and also on a desktop device. So now what we are going to do is the menu component has already been imported or created at the UI by shardcn. So to install it, I already have it and it's part of the starter file. But to install it, this is how we are going to go about it. So when we come back to the shardcn website, we can search for navigation menu and it takes us to this page. So it gives us the procedures on how to install this navigation menu. And when we copy this code yarn here, paste it in our terminal and hit run, the component is going to be created out of the box and added to the UI directory. So that's how come we install the navigation menu. So we can follow that steps and you will get all this code from shardcn, right? Alright, so in the menu.tsx file, we are going to import useClient and we are going to import React from React. We are going to import link from Next link, and we import cn from the lib file or folder. So we have this cn exporting this function from the lib utils.TypeScript. So we go back to the menu and then we are going to import navigation menu from shardcn. So when we visit the shardcn website, we are going to copy everything here and paste it here. And then so when we get back to the nav menu, we can export function menu. And when we export the function menu, we can copy all these and paste it and modify them. So let's just type them out by hand. So return navigation menu with the class name of hidden. So this is going to be responsive as I mentioned earlier, flex, and then we close this tag and we have navigation menu list. Navigation menu list. Inside the navigation menu list, we have navigation menu item. And we are going to create a link. href home. So this is going to have a legacy behavior and we're going to pass in href. And we have the navigation menu link. Navigation menu link. We write home, which is going to be the home nav. And we have the navigation link. We give it a class name of navigation menu trigger style. Right, so we can copy the menu item, paste it, and then change the name to verify identity. So those are the two menus that we would create for this project. So if you have more menus, we just copy and then duplicate it and change the name. So the menu links and the menu items has been created. So we are going to create this navigation menu link. Right, so let's copy this code here and paste it over here to change the behavior, the default behavior for the navigation menu link. Right, so we change it over here. Right, so we have the menu links created. We can call them here menu, and then check on localhost, and we have the home and verify identity. So next on the list is to create the action bar. So we create a new file inside the Navbar component folder and name it action buttons.tsx. So inside the action buttons, we are going to have the use client, import React up from React, and then we have use state and use effect. Import use Privy. At the beginning of the video, we set up Privy in our layout config. When we have this Privy provider created, we can use the use Privy hook to get certain information from the user. So I'll tell you in a second why we are importing the use Privy. So we are going to import button, and button can also be installed. When we come to the shardcn website and search for button, you copy this code, paste it in the terminal, and we are going to get button added to the UI component in this components directory. So we are going to get button added. Okay, so we are also going to use wallet from Privy. So use wallet from Privy, and we are going to import. We are going to import X, then align, justify from Lucid React, align, justify, and we are going to import link from React, next link, and we are going to import drop down. We are going to create a drop down component, but for now let's focus on this. I'll get back to the drop down, and then we are going to import this we are going to import get user by address. So this is going to come from the utils from queries. So get user by address. So with this, we can just start writing our action buttons. So we create a constant called action buttons, and then we are going to destruct is ready and authenticated, and also log in and log out from use Privy. So the reason why we are doing this, we are going to render a connect and disconnect button, and also we are going to check whether the user have already logged in to display certain type of buttons. So for example, a login user is going to get access to the get DID link or button to be able to onboard onto our system, and a user who haven't logged in is going to be presented with a login button in that order. And then we are also going to call the wallet from the use wallet. Right, so let's create a couple of states right? So use state is drop down visible, which default state is going to be false. And we are also going to create a state for storing the user info. So we have user info, set user info, use state, and then we are going to create a function to toggle between the menus. So toggle menu, toggle drop down, and this function is going to be set drop down visibility to what drop down visibility is not. So if we have false, we are going to turn it into true, and if we have true, we are going to turn it into false, and create a function called close drop down, and that is just going to set the drop down visibility into false. So we have a use effect here. So this is the first time we are going to call a function from the smart contract. So here we want to get access to the user, right? So we create a function get user info and async. So we create a variable to hold the user info, await, and get user by address. Remember this function. So we created this function in the queries.js. So get user by address, and then we are going to pass in ready from the Privy hook. So is the user ready, and then if the user is ready, we are going to access the wallet of the connected user and get hold of the address. Get hold of the address, and then so we check, is the user ready? If yes, we get hold of the first address of the connected user. Other than that, we just store this default address to call the get user. So as any, and then okay, what is going on here? Okay, all right, and then set user info is going to be whatever information is coming from the user. And we want to call or render this use effect anytime the ready state changes, and also anytime the authenticated state changes. And finally, we call the get user information, user info. All right, so this function is to get access to the user info and store it into this state here, user info, from the function that we created. So now we are going to return the actual action button. So we have a div and a parent div of class name, padding right 2, and we have a div with the class name, item center, justify center, and flex, and we have a div class name, flex SL, then we have space x dot 4, Now we do some checkings here. We check if the user is authenticated, and if that is the case and the user info is not equal to this error, user does not exist. Then we want to create a certain type of component. So then we want to create this. We want to create a links, and then the link is going to have an href of dashboard, a class name, flex, on a large screen, flex, item center, and hidden. And we have a div, and name it a dashboard, and name it dashboard. That's going to hold the name itself, dashboard. Right, so we have this, and then so we have a div with a class name, a font of thin. On a large screen, you want to flex it, margin left 4, margin right 0, item center, hidden, and then we have the pipe symbol over here. So we are going to have another check as well. If the user is authenticated and the user info is equal to this error, we want to render this function or component. Else, we want to do something else. So inside this component, we are going to copy, it's going to be similar to this, so we are going to copy this and paste it here. And we are going to change this from dashboard to onboard. So all we are doing here is if the user has logged in, we want to render an onboard button. So we check first, is the user authenticated? No, show him dashboard. And is the user authenticated, and then the user info is equal to this error, meaning there is a user who haven't been onboarded onto the platform. And then change the name to get digital identity. And if nothing else happens, we don't want to render any button. So from this div, we are going to create another div. And this div is going to have a class name of flex large space x of 2, item center, padding right 4, and we have link. So we pass in the href. We have this button here, and then this button is going to be the connected button, right? So the button we imported on top here, this button, is going to have a variant of outline, which is part of the properties of shardcn, and then a class name, on a large screen, flex, item center, hidden, border none, and test MD. And finally, we are going to have authenticated. We are going to check if the user is authenticated, and if yes, we are going to render a disconnect button, and if no, we render a connect button. So we are going to have the same button components, disconnected, disconnect. We have class name, hidden, LG block. On click is going to be logout. So Privy gives us this function out of the box, logout and login function, to interact with the smart contract, or to log in into the application or connect to the application. Same thing is going to happen for the login button. So you're going to have connect. I keep on saying login, connect. So connect button, and then the function is going to be login. Alright, so what is left now is the drop down component, which I want us to create right now. So drop down menu, .tsx. So the drop down menu is basically the same as the menu we created, the action buttons, but just that this is going to be displayed on a mobile screen. So I'll copy it. I'll copy the drop down menu and paste it over here. I'll copy it and paste it over here. So we have use wallet from Privy, use Privy button. We have the accordion. Accordion element can also be found when we search accordion on chat.cn. So we can install the accordion and then just get ready to use it from the onset. So the drop down menu has been copied. Since they are basically the same as the action buttons, I don't want us to be repeating ourselves, and to save more time to talk about the more important stuffs that we have. So these are basically the same, so I copied it to save time and also to make more room to talk about more important stuffs. So the drop down menu has been copied and pasted here. The complete code has already been pushed onto GitHub as the time this video is out, so we can check the complete code and compare side by side. So we have the drop down menu. So inside the action buttons page, there's one more thing. So we are going to check if the drop down visibility is true, and if that is the case, we are going to render a div, and the div is going to have an on click event to toggle the drop down. Okay, the function we created here, toggle drop down. Okay, to toggle drop down, and then we have a class name, rounded full, and then on an extra large screen we want to hide this because we only want to see the mobile drop down on the small devices. And we have X, which is this one, the X we imported at the Lucid React. Give it a class name of height 5 and a width of 5, item center, justify center, and rounded full. We close it. And then we have another check. If the drop down is not visible, we also want to do this. We want to create a div with an on-click event to toggle down. Toggle the drop down. You're going to have a class name flex. On a large screen, we are going to hide this. And we have align justify icon, which basically is having the same class name as the one we have for the X. So I'll copy that class name, paste it, and then change the height to 6 and 6, height of 6 and the width of 6. So you have the navbar. So now the menu and the logo has been imported. Let's import the action buttons. So we have action buttons. And then let's head back to localhost port 3000 and check. Alright, so we have everything working perfectly fine. So we have the logo here, the home verify identity. When we turn this into the mobile view, we can see we have the toggle, and we see the home jobs verify identity and the connect. So we can click on the connect button, and Privy is going to show this modal, and we can connect with our addresses. So connect with account 2, confirm, and Privy is working on behind the scenes too. So I have to sign, and then everything is successful. So we have the get DID and the disconnect. So meaning everything is working perfectly fine. So now the navbar is complete. Let's move on to building the rest of the landing page. So now we are about to work on the hero section, this particular side of the application. So we create a new file named hero section.tsx, and this is going to contain the avatar and the text that we see on the home page. Alright, so we start by importing use client, and then we import the button, which we have already installed using the shard.cn, and then we are going to import image from next image, import link, import link from next link, and we have a micro animation on this page. So we are going to use Framer motion. So import motion from Framer motion, and we are going to import use ref from React, and we are going to import use media query from React responsiveness. So use media query, and then we are going to import use state, and also import use effects. All right, so we are going to use two icon package in this application. So one is going to be React icons, which we are going to import pi arrow right from React icons, and then we are going to import a couple of icons like briefcase and then badge, lock and share icon from tablet icons React. So this package here, tablet icons. Either tabular or tablet. So tabular icons, right? Tabular icons. So the installation of these icons can be found in the documentation page. So I'll place a link in the description. So we are going to import this icon from tabular icons React. So first icon is briefcase, and the second icon is badge. The third icon is icon lock square rounded, and the final icon is going to be icon share. All right, so we are going to create the tabs for the landing page. We are going to create the tabs for the landing page. So we create a constant name tabs. So the tabs icon are going to be this. So IdentiFi Netlify.app, and these are going to be the tabs icon, this very one. Okay, so we have icon, and then we use the icon ID badge 2, and we have a class name, a width of 8, a height of 8, a margin right of 2, test red 600, PGA red 100, rounded medium. And we have a name for the, so we have an icon, we also have a name. The name here is create DID. So create DID. And then we have a description of get your DID on the blockchain, and we have a more section which contains a div with a class. So we have a learn more, right? Learn more. You have a class name of test red 600 flex item center. And we have this icon beside the learn more. So we have pi arrow right, and it's having this class name of margin left of 1 and a text of small. And then finally the image property of a tab. So the image, we have the asset plant .svg. So basically this is the structure of a tab. So I'm going to copy the rest of the tab properties. I'll copy all of the tabs and then paste it over here. Basically the same format but with different names and different assets. So we create a constant hero section, and a constant of ref equals useRef null, and we create these variables. So we are going to create active tab and then set active tab use state. So by default the active tab is going to be the first element, and on small screen we are going to use this mask width for a media query. So we return. So we create this div and give it a class name, MD items center, and then flex of flex row, column, right? So we are going to have this section. We are going to create this div inside the main div, and what this div is going to do is to hold the name your identity reinvented. So that's what we have here. So it's just a div with all these classes, right? And right after that div we also have create once, identify everywhere with IdentiFi. So we are going to create that as well, and that is also a paragraph, just a paragraph with these class names. So we have the create once, identify everywhere, and then when we check the local host port 3000, localhost port 3000. So there is nothing here since we haven't saved the code and imported it into the page.typescript, right? So we have the paragraph also created, and then we are going to create the button, right? The create identity button. So it is also going to be a div, and the div is going to contain this button here with the name create identify. So we have all these classes that are parts to make sure this button is aligned at the center, right? Create identity. So I would want to import the hero section and see what we have. So hero section. Okay, so I guess we have to export default the name of the component first. So we have to export default hero section to be able to call it. So hero section. And when we open the local host, this is what we have. So we have the identity reinvented, create once, identify everywhere with IdentiFi. So we have that, and when we zoom it, you can see, yes, this is exactly what we have in the finished product. So next thing is to create this SVG, right? So back to the hero section, right after the button, the create identity button, we are going to create the SVG. So the SVG is found in this div, and then we have the image with the source, alt, width, height, and the class name. So this asset can be found in the assets directory here, the public asset. So we have all the SVGs over here. So when we save this and move back to the localhost port 3000, we have our SVG. Things are starting to take shape, right? Okay. So this is what we want to do. On a small screen, we want to stack all these divs on top of each other. So we are going to create that media query using the use media query that we created. So we have this code here, and this is what the code is all about. So on a small screen, how do we know if we are on a small screen? We created a use media query here, and then we have a variable name, it's small screen. So we can check if we are on a small screen with this use media query. If we are on a small screen, these are the tabs. So we want to loop through all the tabs. So tabs.map is going to loop through all the tabs and return this motion.div. As I mentioned, we have this micro animation. So we are using Framer motion for that. So we return this div, and then we check for active tab from the tab data or items that we are getting from the tabs array. And then we have on mouse over set active tab, and we are rendering the tab icon here, the tab name here, and then we have another motion.div over here, which is to make sure we have that smooth movement. And other than that, we don't want to so when we are on a small screen, we have a grid calls of 1, so everything is displayed in one column. But if we are on a large screen, we want to display everything in a row, right? So this is the code to do just that. So when we save this and head back to localhost port 3000 and refresh the page, we can see we have the divs over here with the same effect as what we have in the complete project, right? So what is left? We want to create this last section, and then we move on to the other pages, like the verify identity and the onboarding page as well. Let's work on the last section of the home page. So we are going to create a new file inside the landing page called section, which is going to hold that last section. Alright, so we are going to build the section page, and let's start by importing the following. So we are going to import these icons from React icon, right? So we are going to import from React icons PI, and then we import PI arrow right pi check circle fill. We import clipboard pi clipboard light. Then we import house fill. We are going to import share light. We are going to import user check and also import the image from next image. So we are going to create a list of items. So when we check on this deployed website, we have this list of items here. So we are going to create just that, this list of items. So we have const, and items is going to be an array of objects. And the first item or property of the object is going to be an icon. So we have icon, and then we call the pi. So we are going to start with this icon, social profile. So we have pi house fill. We give it a class name, test 2xl, a text red 500, and the second property of this object is going to be a name, and the name is going to be called social profiles. And then we have the buttons. We create a div, and give it a class name of test sky 500, flex item center, hover on with a cursor of pointer, right, and the padding top of 6. So we save that and then create the final property called the image, and the image is going to hold the path or the URL of the company -wiki-p engine. So we are basically going to repeat this for the rest of the items. So I'm just going to copy the rest of the items and paste it here, since they are basically the same. So copy everything and then paste it here. So we have these buttons. So yeah, the rest of the buttons: manage profile, share your identity, and the rest. Okay, so we are going to create a constant section with this, and we are going to return this fragment, React fragment, and then create a div with a class name, flex column, padding top of 32, and item center justify center. So inside this div, we are also going to have another div. We are going to have another div for containing this. So endless ways to use it. Learn how. So we create a div and give it a class name, test 3 extra large XL. On a large screen, we want the text to be 5XL. so 5XL, and the font supposed to be medium, justify, center, and item center. Then we give it a flex. So we basically put the title here, so endless ways to use it. Let's go ahead and save this. So export default section, and then we are going to import it in the page, in the landing page .tsx, right? So let's import a section and test it on localhost port 3000. So run this, refresh the browser, and then we have it, endless way to use it. So we are not done yet. We have to create this arrow here, and then the rest of these components. So moving back to the sections page, we are going to create another div to contain the learn how with the right arrow icon. So we give it a class of test sky 500, flex, and item center. And when the user hover on this, we want to the cursor to change into a pointer, and a padding top of 6. With the test learn how, we add this arrow, p arrow right, and then give it a class name with margin left 3, test small, and then go back to localhost port 3000 and test it out. So there we go, we have our icon rendered on the home page. So we are creating these pages next. Okay, so to do that, we are going to create a div, right? We create a class name of grade, and then on extra large we want the grade to have 4 columns. So grade calls 4, padding bottom of 32. On the medium screen, we want to have a grade of 2 columns. Grade of 2 columns. And then we have MD row or span of 1, gap 4, and then we have XL of gap. On SL, we want the gap to be 6. We add a margin top of 8, PX of 8. Then we have MD PX 16. On XL, we have PX 0. XL, we also want the width to be 3 divided by 4. To XL, we want the width to be 55%, and we are going to create an MX of auto, and an MD, we want the width to be full. So inside this div, we are going to render the items. So we have items.map, and then we have item index. So we are going to return a div, and we have a key. We have to give it a key of index to help React.js know which part of the component to render in the DOM, document object model. So we have a class name. So let's copy this code here. So this is going to be the class name. So we are going to check if the index is equal to 0. And once we have the index that exists at position 0, we apply this class. Else we don't apply anything, and this is going to happen for the rest of the class. And for the index item, we want to apply justify between. So this is going to be the array, and inside this we have a div that have a class name with properties flex and then flex column. And within this, we want to render the icon here. So we have item.icon, and we create another div to hold the item name and the item button. So the this div is going to have the item.name, and then we have a class for this div, which is text large, a font of medium, and then margin top of 2. And finally, we create the button, item.button here, and render our image right after this div. So we are going to render the icon here, or the image. So we have item.image. We want to check if the image exists, and if the image exists, we want to render it or show it. So we create a div, and the div is going to have this class name. Inside this component, we are going to call the image or display the image, right? So the image is having these properties. So we have the source, which is the image dot item dot image, and then we have the alt, width, height, and then finally let's add this class. So we are going to add this class, a margin of top, a width of 96, and rounded of extra large. So saving this, let's check the localhost port 3000 and scroll down, and there we go. We have everything rendered on the home page. So we are done with the home page, and what is left for us to work on is the onboarding page, right? So let's just dive right into the onboarding page. So on the onboarding page, let me close everything, every tab here, to have a clean interface. So we can collapse the landing page folder, and then within the app directory, we are going to create this folder called Onboard, right? Onboard, and create a page.tsx. Create a new folder, a component for Onboard, and then within this component, we are going to have another component. So we are going to have the form fields.tsx. We are going to have the social media field, inputs, and then we are going to have the user profile, display.tsx, and we are going to have the contact form, right? We are going to have the contact form .tsx. So we have these, and so let's create something basic in the onboarding page. So we are going to create a const, name it onboard, and we are going to have this as a functional component. So export default onboard, and we are going to return The first component we are going to import here is the Navbar. We import the Navbar here, and then we are going to have the contact form here. Before we import the contact form, I want us to render a paragraph that says onboard page, right? Onboard page. Let's have our React fragment here, and then make sure everything is within the component. So when we click on this get DID, it will take us to the onboard page. So we are just returning this paragraph here, and it is up to us now to create something that looks like this. So we have our mobile mockup, and then we have the form input fields, everything rendered nicely. So we are just about to create this in our localhost port 3000. So let's start with the contact form page or component. So first thing first, we are going to import the use client, and then we are going to import Axios. Axios is a package used for handling HTTP requests or making calls to API. So we import Axios, we import use state, and then we import use effects as well. And then we have this component here, import this component from hook at hook form resolvers. So we are going to import ZOD for handling the form types. So we have ZOD resolver, and we're also going to use form from React select from React hook form, and then we are going to import select from React select. So select from React select, and then we are also going to import make animate from React select animate. So this is going to be make animated, and then you're going to import all of these from the UI components, right? So we are going to import form control, form item, form label from the UI component. So to get started with this form, or to create this form component, you can head to the shardcn documentation website and search for form. Once you have navigated to the form page, you can literally copy this command and paste it in the terminal, and it's going to create the form component for you. You are going to get everything out of the box. We are also going to import button and use toast. So button and use toast are also coming from the UI component. To use a toast, you can search for it, use toast on the shardcn website, and then copy the code and learn how to implement this. But if you started with me from the starter file, you don't have to worry about this because they were already included. So we are going to import these functions: get user by address, and create a user. We are also going to get username by address. All these functions we created in the queries. When we come to the utils and check the queries, these functions, the one to interact with the blockchain, right? So we have that function here as well. And we are going to import use wallet from Privy. So we are going to import use wallet from Privy. Use wallet from Privy. We are also going to import these components, right? We are going to import all these components which we are yet to create, but we already have the custom image uploader, which I'll go over briefly, but these components are yet to be created. So when you check the components in the onboard, you see we have the form fields, we have the social media input and the user profile display. So we will create these when we get to that section in the dev. So I will comment this out to get rid of the error. And then we are going to import Toaster from the component UI. You can also get that one from shardcn. And then we have options. We are going to import options and form scheme. So inside the utils folder, I remember saying we are going to work on this form schema and then the options on file. So the form schema, so we are going to paste this code here. The form schema is basically validating the input as the user types. So to make sure everything is correct and on point. First name is a string, email, all these variables are strings. And when we get to the social media URLs, we are using regular expressions to check if it's a valid URL for each of the social media icons. So that's why we have in the form schema coming from the Zod, import everything from Zod. And for the options are for this part. So when we check the deployed code inside the select skill, we can see we have a lot of skills here. So these are the options for that skills. So we just paste them here, and then we are going to work with them in the select, right? All right, so we have them here. We can get back to the contact form. So we imported the options and also the form schema and form values. We are going to copy this code here, URL patterns and also the animate component. These patterns are to filter out or check the URL as we input them in the input field to see if they are correct, and if not, it's going to throw an error. So for example, instead of typing twitter.com, when I type Twitter, leaving one key, so one letter here, this doesn't make it correct. You see we have invalid X URL. The moment I add R, it goes away. So this checker is making sure that we are typing the right social media link. And we are going to export default function create profile. So we have this function, the export skeleton created. So what we are going to do is to create these states. We are going to create these states. So we have the country code, set country code, which is going to be a use state, and it's a string. So we have the type here. We have use wallet from Privy. We have toast from component UI, and we have loading, set loading state, submitted, set submitted, which is Boolean, the type of Boolean. And for this, once we are done creating this, we are also going to create a state for the form. So we have the state for the form data, and we have this use effect to get the country code. So when we check this identity here or the mockup here, we can see we have the country code here, GH. The application detects your country and then populates it with the right country code using this function. So what we are doing here is to this is a use effect, right? So using as yours, so we are going to access this endpoint, which gives us all the country code, And then we create this function called handle change. And this handle change is going to update the country code for us in the set form state, right? So we are going to create this handle change function next. All right, so the handle change isn't just going to handle the country code, but also all the other fields that we have in the application. So the handle change is going to accept a string and a value. So in this case, the string is a country code, which is basically same as what we have in the state. And then the value is going to be what we are getting from the server. And once we have these values, we update the set form. We also do same for email. We validate the email and also check for the social media patterns before we update them as well. And then finally we set the error messages. So we have handle change. And once we have that, we create these states. So we create these error states up at the top here. Set errors and then selected options. So the options for the skills. And these set errors are going to hold the error messages that we are going to display on top of the input fields. So next, we are going to create these functions. So let's import this code here. So we have two functions here. So we have validate URL, which accepts a string and a pattern, and we have the form over here too, and we are going to use this to create the forms and initialize some values in the input fields. So we are going to handle skill change. We are using React Select for this skills change, so we have to create a function to handle that separately, because the object coming from a selected item is different from the normal object that we get from the normal select input. So we have to create a function to handle that separately. That is why we have here. And this is also checking if the selected items are less than 3, because the maximum skill you can select are 3. Once you reach the cap, you can't select anymore. So we see everything that we select here doesn't get added. We can get rid of one and it will be added. So that is the function of the handle skill change over here. And for the select to look like this, what we have here, the select bar to look like this, we have to create our own costume classes. So I'm going to paste that over here. So these are the styles that we use to create the custom styles for the select option in React Select. So one function we are also going to create is handle image and on submit. So the handle image function, so when we check this image here, this is the default avatar for the identity. But the moment I click on this and select any image at all, within some few seconds we see the image changes, and then we have a new image here. This image change is not happening just at the front end, but we are also saving the image on this platform called Pinata Cloud. So when we check Pinata Cloud, it's an IPFS powered cloud where users can store image in a decentralized way. So when we visit the documentation page, we can look at the installation procedure. The documentation page teaches you how to set up your cloud. So when we click on get started, asks us to sign up or create an account. So you have to go ahead and create an account. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in. So once I am logged in, I can create a folder and upload a file. And you can get your API key to once you log in. So the API key is going to be important when uploading your file. So the API key is going to be used for authorization. So that is what we have here before you can upload your image to the Pinata cloud. So when we upload the image to the Pinata cloud, you'll be able to get back a URL. So the URL is going to be an IPFS hash. So once you append that hash to this particular URL, gateway.pinata.cloud IPFS, you will be able to display the image you uploaded. So that's what we are doing here. And the handle change function is called when a user tries to upload an image. We create this object to handle the post request, and we post the form, whatever we have, the image, to this endpoint, this particular endpoint. Bear in mind, without this token, you'll not be able to upload the image. Once we have been able to send this to the cloud, we get a response back, a response data, and we check for an error. If there is an error, we throw it. Else, we save the image URL in the form data, display it over here, and then it will be ready to be saved in the smart contract. So that is basically how we are handling the image. And finally, the last function we are going to create is going to be onSubmit. So this is the function that is going to submit the data to the smart contract. So we have React form event, and then we have set loading. So we get hold of all this information or all this data, basic info, first name, last name, from the form data, this state here, form data here, and then we do same for the rest: professional info, social skills, social links, visibility, and we check if these fields are missing. So these are the required fields. So we check if the username is missing, first, last name, or the email are missing. So we create a constant to await. So this create user function is coming from the queries.js, a function that serves as a bridge to link us from connecting to the Ethereum virtual network. So we create a user using this create user function in the queries.js, and the results are going to be logged. Once the result is logged, we are going to create a toast that a user has been created successfully. If anything else happens, we are going to throw an error. Right? Okay, so now let's return the actual form element. So before we do that, we are going to return and create a div over here. The div is going to be a class name of flex column. On medium screen, we always have flex row, item center. MD, we are going to have item stats, justify between, we have space y4, space y4, MD, we have space y0, MD space x10. We have a padding top of 20, and we have a padding bottom of 20, and then we have a px of 4, MD of px 16. So we have the parent div created. So now we are going to create all the sub divs. all the sub divs. So first div is going to hold the title, so this very title, and then the profile mockup. So we have a div here with a class name md test 4l sl text xl, a font of medium, a width of 3 out of 3, a padding bottom of 3. So we type here create edit decentralized digital identity, and then it's a breeze. So creating with IdentiFi. So we are going to have a different color for the IdentiFi, so we are going to put it in a span. Create a class and give it a color of test sky 500. You're going to save that. We are going to have our toaster here, a toaster component here, and then the user profile display. The user profile display. So before we call the user profile display, we don't even have it yet. So let's go ahead and create the user profile display. But before that, I think we should test the contact form page out. So the create profile page. So let's test that out. So let's import that. We have import, and we have the contact form from the contact form component. So we import that here, contact form, and let's move back to the localhost, refresh our page, and there we have it. We have create a decentralized digital identity. Creating a decentralized digital identity is a breeze with IdentiFi. So we are good to go. Now left for us to create the user profile mockup. So I would like to add a little bit of space here. Right, there we go. So let's create the user profile, the mockup. So the user profile mockup is going to have all these icons. So we are going to import. So the user profile mockup is going to have all these icons. So we are going to import React and all these icons from Tabla icons React, right? Tabla icons React. And once we have that, we are going to create an interface, because the user profile display component is going to have a prop, the form data prop, and the country code. So we create an interface for that, and we go ahead and create the actual component. So the component is going to be const user profile display, and we are going to have react.fc, react functional component type, and then we have our user profile props over here. So we have the form data and the country code. We are going to have this. So we are going to create a div, and to create the mobile mockup, we have a couple of classes. I am not going to type each of them by hand because we have a lot of classes and it's going to take way more time. This deserves a dedicated video on its own. So I will go ahead and copy everything and explain them step by step. So inside the div, copy and paste everything over here. So we have all these div creating this beautiful mockup. So we have a parent div for this frame, and we have a div to handle this one, this side button, and then we have these additional three buttons also being handled by a div. So when you go through the code, you'll be able to identify which div is for which button, and then you'll be able to understand whatever is going on. So inside the mockup, we have an image, we have all these card rendered, and skills, social, and all the other informations. So we have the image coming from data.image URL, and if we don't have any data here, we are going to render the default image. Same for the username. If there is nothing coming from the form data, the username, we are going to render the IdentiFi DID over here. So you can think of these as the defaults or the placeholders for the mockup. Same thing happens to the skills. So we have form data, the skills.map, socials. So we check if there is a form data.x. So if there is something coming from the form data. If there is nothing coming from the form data, we are not going to render anything. So that's basically what we have in the user profile. So yeah, that's basically it for the user profile. So we can go ahead and export this function, export default user profile display, and then we can import it in the contact form. So we are going to import the user profile display. It accepts two parameters, the form data and the country code, right? So we provide that information to the user profile display. Let's save that and move back to test our localhost port 3000. And there we go. We have our user profile display with all the default values that we set it to display. Right. Okay, so we are good to go. Next thing is to work on the form fields and then the social media input. So for the form field, let's import all these. React, form item, form label, form control, from component UI forms, and then we import input as well from the component UI input. And then we are going to create this interface called the form field prop, which is supposed to be a form data type. Handle change must be a function, and then we have an error props as well, right? So we create a constant form field, which is going to be a React functional component dot the form field props, and we have that over here. We have that over here, and then we pass in the form field and handle change. So we pass in the form data and handle change. And then we have our arrow here, which we are going to return a div. So let's first create this fragment here, and then return a div with a class name md flex item center gap 6. Right, so we have this. So we are going to create the form items. So starting with the first name, we are going to copy this form item from the UI component. We have the form item here, the form label, first name, form control, then you have the input. So we will move back to the contact form and create this. We are going to create this form here. So form, so we have form, and within this we are going to create a div and give it a class name with full md with 2 divided by 3, and within this we are going to create a condition. So if we have not submitted a form, we are going to render the form fields, right? All the form fields that we have here, including the select from the skills select, and the image uploader, and the image uploader, as well as the social media input, with the last component, which is going to be about you section, and then the submit button. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to copy that if the component is not submitted. We are going to paste everything here. So if we have not submitted anything, we want to render the form fields. So these form fields are the components we are creating. So the components we are still creating, so this very one. So let's go ahead and complete this form field and then move back and adjust all the imports. So inside the form field, I am going to copy the rest and paste them here to save time, to save time. Copy and paste them here, and so this is the last name, and we have another form item over here for the emails, phone number, and all the other fields. So I'm going to paste that over here. And paste it over here. So we have all the data and all the information that we need from form fields, right? So we are going to export. So the name is supposed to be form fields, which contains all the form inputs. So we are going to export default form fields, and then import it here, form fields. There we go. And we have this form label for select skills. So this select is coming from React select. So we just call it and pass in these properties or these props. Handle skill change, we already created that. Options, we already imported that. And then the custom styles, we already imported that. So let's create the social media input as well. We are going to copy that and paste it over here. So what we did was to import React and import the form field component from the UI. Import the input. We created the interface for social media input. We created the component. Basically, it follows the same pattern as the form field and user profile display. So we have the form item here for social media. So we have, if there is an error, this is going to be a props. If there is an error, display the error message and then give the label a title. It's going to display the error in addition with the label name. And we have the form control, which is the input to accept the social media links. Same for Instagram, TikTok, and the rest of the social media. So we import that as well. Social media input. For the custom image uploader, this is what we did. Inside the component UI, we have custom image uploader. So we are using React drop zone for that, and when you check this code very well, we have the onDrop function, we have the remove image function, and we have a use effect here, and also the actual component to handle or store the image, pass in the file object to the form data, and upload it to Pinata IPFS. So in a nutshell, that is what the custom image uploader is doing. And we have the about you section, we have the submit button. So I think we are ready to test the create digital identity function out. Alright, so we have the form components rendered, the form input rendered, and also the user profile display rendered. So we can test this out with a test user. So the first name is test, last name is test, username is test user. Before we test this out, okay, the username is test user. We have the home address. I'll just enter anything here, date of birth, anything, university, MIT, test email, work history, Apple, phone number. We just type any number at all, and you can see as we type, everything gets rendered in the display in real time. So in real time, everything is happening in real time. So we can input any number. Job title, software engineer, and the skills, back-end, DevOps, and data science. So for the social media, we are going to add Twitter, we are going to add Instagram. Let's make it just Twitter and Instagram, and we are going to write something small or something brief about me. Then we have it in the profile section. So we can click on the submit, and hopefully, and we should see a MetaMask window that gives us the message to sign or approve this transaction. So click on submit, and there we go. We have the MetaMask asking us to confirm this transaction. So we click on confirm, and then we wait for a while. We can inspect the console as well. We wait for a while, and then boom, we have a message: user created successfully. So we have a user created successfully. So when we check the contact form page 268, the contact form page 268, we have a console.log. When the user is created, we are logging it over here. So user created, we log the receipt to the console. When we check the console, we can indeed see the transaction on the blockchain. So we have all this information written onto the blockchain. Now tell me if this isn't easy to create. So we just had our first interaction with the blockchain. We created a user and the information has been stored on the blockchain. That is amazing. So what we are going to do next is to work on the dashboard page as soon as possible. So the dashboard is going to have a profile and edit profile. So let's go ahead and then create that. So inside the app directory, we are going to create a new folder called dashboard. And we are going to have our component. We are going to create a component folder inside the dashboard, and we are going to create a page.tsx. This is supposed to be a file, not a folder. So we are going to create a new file, page.tsx, and then we create another file called the dashboard.tsx, and then inside the dashboard component we have edit profile, .tsx. We have the profile itself, profile.txx, and then we have a section page. So these are the components that we are going to have. So it's supposed to be section.tsx, and there we go. So inside the dashboard page, we are going to import the Navbar, and also we are going to import the dashboard component, but we haven't created that yet. So we are going to make it a comment, dashboard component, and const dashboard. We have this over here, and we return this div. We call a navbar, and since we don't have the dashboard component, we are just going to leave it blank. So let's go ahead and create the dashboard component. So the dashboard component is going to be very simple. We are going to have a use client here. We are going to import use state and use ref, and then we are going to import framer motion, profile, and then edit profile. Since we don't have the profile component and edit profile component, we are going to leave that for now. And then we are going to export default this function called contact forms. And we are going to create a tab, two tabs. So one for the profile and one for the edit profile, as I mentioned earlier on, that we are going to have two tabs, profile and edit profile tab. So we create a use state as well, a constant of active tab, and then set active tab. And we are going to return the tabs inside the dashboard component. So we have the tabs being rendered here. We are looping through all the tabs, and with motion.div we are going to render a basic animation, so a micro animation, when we toggle between the profile and the edit profile tab. And so this is going to render the respective component that we click. So if we click on the profile, we are going to have the profile component, and if we click on the edit profile, we are going to have the edit profile component. So let's go ahead and create the profile and edit profile. This is going to be the profile page, and we are going to use the same logic or same component for the verify profile. So we have the section here, and we are supposed to create this section. So let's go ahead and create the section as well. So we are going to copy that and then paste it over here. So now we have the section, and so we can import the profile and edit profile as well. So since we have the profile, we are going to import that first, and then we do the edit profile. So component profile, so we do the edit profile later on, but then let's return just a paragraph for edit profile. So now this is what is going on. Inside the page we are importing Navbar, and also we need the dashboard component as well. So we have to import this dashboard component. So we can do that by importing dashboard component from the dashboard, right? So we have dashboard component. So we have this dashboard component over here, and with this dashboard component created, inside the dashboard we have profile and edit profile components that we are supposed to create. So on the dashboard page we are just rendering these tabs and their respective components. So we created the profile component, which also have a section component, and we move ahead to create that section component. I will throw more light on this section component in some few seconds, but before that, let's make sure we are rendering everything on the dashboard screen. So let's head back to the localhost port 3000 and click on this dashboard. Alright, so we have this error here. The default export is not a React component in page. So we have to export default dashboard. Refresh the page and see. Alright, so this is the section that I wanted us to create. So this is the section. So on the section page or component, we have this mockup which looks like a tag, So we have this mockup created in this section page. So these are the class to create that tag. So we have a div here to create this exact tag for yourself. This video is purposely for understanding how to integrate smart contracts into your Next.js application. So we have this tag here, and we have the image rendered components, the image rendered. We have all these other informations displayed in this section page. when we click on the edit profile, we just have edit profile. So we should, add something to this to make sure that we can edit our profile. And to do that, we are going to copy the same code from create profile. Since they are basically the same, we are going to copy them, and then we are going to change a few functions. So instead, with the submit function, instead of we using the create user from the queries.js, we are going to use edit user. And we have edit user here, and then I think that is basically it. So that's the only changes that we would have to do over here. Edit user, and also work on the import. Since we are in the dashboard component, we would have to modify the imports as well. So we have to check that, and then with that we have our edit profile in place. We can save this and head back to the dashboard component. We place the edit profile that we created to actual edit profile component. And when we refresh the browser, there we go, we have the user profile displayed over here. So as you can see, we have the test, which is the data that we added when creating our digital identity. And we have the profile, which is a test user. Remember the username that we created. And we have software engineer, we have the test Gmail, this phone number here. Our education was MIT, we have that as here. And the social media icons we added was just Twitter and Instagram. We also have those ones here as well. And then we have this bio that we created as well, also here. Contact and everything is in place. So basically everything is working perfectly, and we can edit this page. We are going to work on the verify identity page. So to do that, we are going to create the verify identity page. We create a new folder, name it verify identity, and then inside the folder we are going to create page.tsx, and then we create section.tsx. So in the page, in the verify page, we are going to type this here. We will copy this code and paste it over here. So we have our Navbar component, and we have the section which we are yet to create, and then a footer which we are also yet to create. So let's create the section first, which is going to hold this. So it's going to hold this over here. When we click on verify identity, it's going to hold this title input, and then the function to verify an identity. So we are going to copy and paste that in the verify identity page, and we move back to the section, copy and paste that over here, and then we move back to the page and create the footer. So in the footer, we are going to create the footer in the component directory. So we create a footer.tsx, and this is the footer. I just pasted it over here, our basic stuffs, and when we save this, we can import the footer and move back to localhost port 3000 and click on verify identity. When we click on that, we have the page displayed or rendered. So we have this very page rendered. So now we are going to implement the function to verify a user. Verification is basically the same as the dashboard. When we come to the dashboard and visit the profile tab, we can see we have all this information here. So the verify user is basically going to be this very component, but with the search user information displayed on this card. So there's going to be a lot of repetition. Inside this section.tsx for the verify identity page, we have an onSubmit search. So we are creating a new route called profile. And inside the profile component, we are going to have a value, a parameter called the search value, which is basically going to be any value typed inside this verify identity input area, passing it down to the profile component, and then looking into the smart contract code and fetch out the said user or the searched user. So we are going to create a new folder called profile, and inside this profile page we are going to create a new folder again, square bracket ID, and then square bracket. So this square bracket means this route is a dynamic route, so we can visit profile / any query at all, and we can get hold of that query and perform whatever we want to perform. It could be a search or to store it in a database or whatever you want to do. The possibilities are endless. So we create a new file within the ID folder named page.tsx. Create a new file named user-profile.tsx, and inside the page file we are going to have the navbar, the footer, and then the profile section. So the user profile section, so we have the navbar here, the profile section, and the footer. The profile section is basically this one here. It's going to be exactly the same as this one. So we are going to copy that code and paste it inside the user profile. So what we are doing here is to whatever is coming after the profile endpoint. So profile / any user that we want to search, we get hold of that through the params. And what we do with that param is to pass it in the getUserByUsername function we created at the queries.js. And then this is going to fetch the respective user or the appropriate user for that said username. So once there is a result coming from the blockchain or the smart contract, we can store that and then display it as we did in the dashboard section, and it's going to work like magic. So let's save this and then head over to the verify page. So the only user we have is test user, so let's search that and click on the verify. So we can see immediately we hit on the profile endpoint / the test user. This parameter passes through the getUserByUsername function, returned the user information of that said user, stored it here, and then we can display it onto this card. So let's check a random user that we know doesn't exist. So something like Coca-Cola. Let's search of that, and it says user does not exist. So we have it here, user not found. So that is basically it, and I would want to show you guys how to how to deploy this code on Netlify, so you can share the URL publicly. So let's visit netlify.com. And before you do that, make sure you have your code pushed onto GitHub. So I have pushed mine onto GitHub, and the repository I am going to use is IdentiFi. So when I visit the Netlify page, I'll click on login. If you don't have an account with Netlify, you can create an account. So on the login page, it takes me to this page over here. So I can add a new site by clicking on the new site button and click on import an existing project. By clicking on import an existing project, I can select which platform I want to deploy the code from, being it GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Microsoft Azure. I have my code in GitHub, so I'm going to select GitHub. And authorize, and then search the repository. So IdentiFi. All right, so we have IdentiFi. We have IdentiFi over here. I will click on that and give the site name. So IdentiFi-v1. And we are going to deploy it on the main branch. So we have the code on the main branch. So we are going to select the main branch, and we are going to leave everything untouched. Then click on deploy IdentiFi v1. So we wait for some few seconds, and this is going to boot up and then run and install all the scripts necessary for production. So let's wait for a few seconds, and this is going to be deployed. Alright, so I think our code was able to deploy it successfully. So we have it hosted on Netlify. We have the complete check mark through initializing all the way up to post-processing. So we can click on the preview button, and it's going to take us to the website, a hosted version of the website. So now we have everything hosted on Netlify. You can come back, and then when we click on this link, you get the actual name, the one we named when deploying the website, identify -v1. So yeah, that is it. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of this video, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this. Comment in the comment section, let me know what you think. Is there anything that we could have improved, or you have suggestions for future videos? Let me know in the comment section. Once again, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.